you're a candidate going,
What? Why?
well,
We
get
had a
Henry
great
on the
rapport.
phone.
We
They're
had a
like, I
great
don't know.
interview. We had a
I
great.
don't know. I don't know, Jeff. If anybody's wondering why for it, because I Googled it. Talk
So
about showcase.
that's best practice right there.
Best practices are for people who don't know what they're doing.
I
And
think a
that's
hiring
the hard
manager
part.
really likes the person and she wants to hire them, then they should have the ability to do so. Please welcome to the show my guest, Jackye Clayton. Jackye, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're having me. Or you're having me. Does that make sense? I'm
I
glad
love
to
your
be here.
Your glasses are always new. Every time I see you on a podcast or a live, it's always got something new.
It's my way of bringing sunshine.
There you
The
go.
world is
That and your
there.
smile, right? Anytime I'm really depressed, I told you last time, I go on LinkedIn, I look up Jackye Clayton, you got a big smiling face on her profile. And it always gives me a nice sunshiny day. So, okay, we're going to summarize 21 in a nutshell, besides being an absolute shit show that it was. Because of COVID, and now we're going into the 5th or 6th or 10th wave, whatever the hell it is now.
Yes.
Give me a quick summary from a technology perspective and everything else.
Yeah, I think in 2021, it was a real, like, kind of a smack in the face to look at the mirror, to really, really look at what's going on in the organization. And then we realized, oh my gosh, the stuff that we've been doing hasn't really been working, and we've got to own that and start looking at what we can do to make it better.
You just made a pretty big, bold statement there, right?
It is.
Was it working before COVID, and then because of circumstances, it stopped working, or did we change, in general, right? We're talking about what kind of things weren't working.
No, well, we'll get into it. It wasn't working before, but people were like,
the job application process has been
crash,
quote unquote broken.
Things like that
while,
wasn't
right?
working. Making sure
Text-based job descriptions are horrible. The resumes don't match up with the job descriptions. The job descriptions don't really describe what it is the client is looking for.
Candidate experience. I think ultimately the way we treated people.
Yeah.
Garbage. Those things that we had to really look at, because it's funny, like when you go to those quiet spaces and you're alone and you have to really look at it of what you're trying to do, then you're like, oh, maybe I need to push this. It's like listening to like off-key music in a large echo chamber where you're like, I just can't stand it. I just can't take it anymore. And we realized as people are looking at making choices, how you treat somebody is going to make a big difference. You can't just hide behind the brand, because some of the biggest brands have been the biggest perpetrators of bad candidate experiences. Without naming any names, you can go easily to Comparably or Glassdoor. Not that those are gospel, but you can take a look at some of the like interview processes, or YouTube, which shows you what it's like to interview to get into certain places. And you're like, I'm just not willing to do that anymore. And so
if you think, one of the most egregious things I think that takes place is you fill out a basic application, and then you have to upload a resume, and then the parsing engine inside the resume is asking you to completely re-enter all of your information again, right? Please stop doing that.
Well, and even worse, you have your first interview with the recruiter and he says, so what do you do again? And then they want you to explain the whole thing that you just retyped, uploaded, updated, and you have to tell the same story because people aren't looking at it. Right?
Yeah. Is that a process problem, or is that more a recruiter problem just because of bandwidth?
I think it's a process. I mean, I think that I like celebrating small wins. I like celebrating every win, because you don't get a lot, right? It's a process issue because we don't then reward our recruiters for having a good candidate experience. We're looking for starts and fast starts and timely starts. And we don't say, if you have a great candidate experience, we incentivize you in some way for that. And I think that's something that is a process. But then also, we also need to look at our tools to make sure that it's forcing us to do that as well. Like, it is helping us create a better process rather than starting out bad before we even talked to the candidate. They had a bad experience. I looked on Reddit and it said people that there's a particular ATS that if they see a company works with it, they don't want to work there.
Oh, I mean,
They just straight up won't apply.
after I left Monster, if I, there was one particular ATS who shall remain nameless, but anytime I saw an application there, wouldn't even apply. I'd try and find somebody on LinkedIn and send them my resume there.
That's right.
So I'm like, hey, I found this job, and if you're interested, I'll go through your 45-minute apply process, but I'm not going through it if I don't have to.
That's right.
Ridiculous. So
well,
it's
the
always,
other thing,
I always find it's better to find somebody there anyway.
better.
After you apply, you find a recruiter, you find a hiring manager that you're networked with, or somebody one of your friends knows, and then send them your information anyway. Hey, I just applied to this job ID number. Maybe you can forward my information along. That always helps.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of companies have implemented that. In fact, I looked at listening to a podcast about how to get into FANG companies, and the suggestion was to never apply for a FANG company. Never apply at a FANG company, and always wait.
FANG is Facebook, Amazon,
Microsoft. Or wait, Microsoft used to be in there.
Netflix and Google. Right. Who's the other A?
It used to be Airbnb.
Airbnb. Okay.
So it was like, you just need to network your way in, because they would never pick the people that applied. And it's like, come on, man. Like, you're asking people to do this in the first. If that's the game, just take down the ATS.
Right.
Just don't do it.
If you're just going to only hire referral-based hiring, that's fine. But why are you forcing hundreds of candidates to go through your crappy apply process if that's the case?
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's hard. I mean, granted, it's hard to respond to every single person that applies if you have a lot of applicants, but you have to figure out a way to communicate. Last week I had to close a job. We're putting it on hold. We had a transition. And so I was like, I'm going to just email everybody and let them know what the process was. And people were gushing with praise for me telling them that we were not going to be hiring for this role this year. And I thought it was going to have the exact opposite effect. But I got more emails of praise. I didn't get any criticism at all. They were just so happy that I said anything, because people have gone radio silent.
Yeah. Ghosting is a thing, right, on both sides. On the candidate side, even more so now because of COVID, and they are in such high demand. But recruiter ghosting has always been kind of a thing, right? So, you throw your resume into the hat and then you never get heard from again. And you're like, I don't know. Like, I know I applied for jobs after I left Monster and, hadn't decided to open up my own agency yet. Applied for hundreds of jobs, probably 250, 300 jobs. I heard from maybe 5.
Now, let me ask you a question. I have a question. I've been kind of pondering this. So if you applied, let's just say 6 months, 7 months down the road, and they send you the email that says, oh, we've closed the job, we haven't made a hire. Does that make you more mad? That's the debate. Or
it's fine. It's always good to get some kind of closure. There is a limit though, right? I think if it goes past 6 months, then it's like,
quietly withdraw.
What's the point? I mean, that's just a horrible recruiting process right there. Your automation was broken. You didn't close out a job. You didn't mark the candidate as filled and then say, send my automation out. And it's just, I don't know, it's just rude. So
absolutely,
there's at least 247 or 245 rude companies out there, which I know.
At least 240.
At least 245.
Right? Same. 2021. The other thing is that people are looking at like systems that are broken, like you're talking about. But I think a lot of people were like, okay, this company has a problem. This company has a problem. And in 2021, what you saw were people looking up and say, wait a minute, all of you are adding to that problem, looking at the employee base and saying, what are you doing to make a change? And so we're starting to see a lot of that, make people making those changes and sharing information that they didn't share before. about the inner workings of the company missions, and really showing how they live by those missions. We're starting to see that, and I think we're going to see more of that next year.
2022, you think there's going to be a lot more, for lack of a better word, an overused word, transparency
Transparency.
within the organization, right? If this were a drinking game, I'm sure if that were one of
That's
the
right.
words, that would be on
Definitely
the
check it off
version.
the bingo. I think they're going to
But
showcase, not, which is different than transparency. I think they're going to showcase and really show examples of real work that people are doing, because people are sick, completely sick of people being performative, and they just want to see if this is a place. But along with that, what's important is that people still understand what you do as an organization, because I've seen a lot of people who are disappointed because they joined a company and they thought they were going to be doing volunteer work the whole time. And it's like, wait, no, like, we have a company to build too, so you have to make sure all those things are in alignment. So showcase what you do, but then showcase who you are as a company as well. See that alignment. I think that's going to be huge. That candidate experience and how we relate as people is something that we're seeing shift.
all right, so give me an idea. You work for Textio, right? I
I
mean,
do.
candidate experience is a huge part of what Textio does. Um, Give me an idea of like a perfect scenario from start to finish, or as much as you can, on what at least a good candidate experience would look like.
So start all the way to the job posting, of course, making sure you're using inclusive language, that you can be aware of a company's mission, that you offer accommodations, and you kind of give a better feeling of a day of life of what it looks like at your company and what they can expect. Doing that accurately. This is not a wish list. So I think it's really telling people this is what we have and this is what we're doing, and not putting this is what we'd like to have. Like, don't throw all the guesses onto a job description. It just makes it messy and muddy and unclear. And putting more accurate descriptions of what a person's actually doing is important. Starting with that, and then make it an easy applicant process, using some of your other social profiles, allowing people to attach their resumes, and then immediately sending an email saying, confirming that we got their application. And in that confirmation, letting them know what you think the process is going to be is key. Just letting them know, thank you, we got your resume. We have, we look at resumes on a regular basis. We plan on this job to be filled within first quarter. Just things like that, so people have a good idea, so that if something does slip through the process, they can look back at this email and see where they think they are. Like if you say, we're starting interviews in January. Right now, we're updating our candidates when people apply, that the email, so people know that we take a company holiday between the 24th through the 3rd of January. So they're not going to expect any responses. We're not in the office, so that they have a better part of that process. After that,
One of the things that I've noticed is over the last couple of years is a lot of the ATSs have created a candidate portal where they can log in and view their status, right? But all too often you log in process, or recruiter to review, or it stays the same exact status for months on end, right?
Yes.
I wish there was some kind of way, because it has to be manual at that point. The recruiter has to take some kind of action, and they're not going to go through, if 100 candidates have applied to a job, they're not going to go through, and pick out the 67 that have been, disqualified, and then pick out the 15 that are qualified and not ready to move forward for whatever reason. So they're just not going to do that. So is there a way, another way that you can update those candidates? Can you think of anything?
A lot of them, I mean, you can just do it in bulk, right?
Yeah.
Like, let people know that you do it in bulk and send an email to everybody and say whether you hired or didn't hire for the job, or you're in process. And I think there's a way of doing it where I think some people don't like doing that part of the process because they're like embarrassed that maybe they didn't pick that candidate, and they don't want to tell the candidate that they haven't picked them. But I think it's still important to let people know we've selected a few candidates. We've gone through with the process. We haven't completed the process, but I wanted you to know where you were, because I don't like when you hold a candidate hostage, right? For some people, we can be, it's our own bias that thinks, oh, they don't care. They applied to a million places and they don't. But for some people, this is their dream job. This is where they want to be. And so we, right now it's changed and who knows what it's going to look like as we grow, but we really strive to give candidates like 72 hours feedback and say whether we selected a candidate, if it's somebody who, because we only hire in 9 states. So if they aren't in the 9 states, we let them know we're not in the 9 states. If they, we review them and we do screenings from us, and we'll immediately look at those, work with the hiring managers. So this is something else that's part of the process that's a little bit different. We work with our hiring managers to go in to do a lot of that first initial screening of looking at the resumes and seeing if they want us to do an additional, to do a screening for recruiting. That automatically sends out. As soon as the hiring manager says, I'm interested in this candidate, then they get an email with a Calendly link to get scheduled so that we can start that first part of the process, so that we can keep it moving. And so, and it's live. I know some people are like, oh, you sent me your Calendly and it's 2 weeks out. Yeah, that's real. That wasn't made up. We're busy. So we do that. And the other piece is that, again, then we'll send an email and let them know what the process is. If they pass that part, we also send, to try to shorten the process. It's a process that recruiters have to do that initially seems like a lot of work, but it actually helps shorten the process, in that we work with our hiring managers around the questions they should be asking based on the job description, based on the role that they're filling. And we send that information to our candidates in advance so that we don't want to stump our candidates. All of us show our best work when we show up every day. We try to anyway, as long as we don't stub our toe. We're bringing our best. We want to give candidates.
It's always nice to have your candidate prepared for the interview, because how do I prepare? I don't know. I don't know what questions a hiring manager is going to ask. He's going to ask you whatever questions, or she's going to ask you whatever questions they're going to ask, right?
That's right.
That's probably not the best interview.
Probably
experience. I'm just saying.
But it was different for people. It's really been where I'm like, we need to send them the questions that we're going to ask. We don't have to say Sally's going to ask these 3 questions, but this is the question pool that the people will draw from in case they want to prepare, And some candidates, we still get to the process. It's obvious that preparation wasn't there, but it wasn't on our side because we were trying to stump the candidate.
Right.
And we've also tried to shorten the process so that we have no more than 4 people on an interview loop is what we're striving. Thank you.
Okay.
I always laugh because the reason why 4, if anybody's wondering why 4, because I Googled it. Talk about showcase.
That's best practice right there.
I teach
4 interviews.
Best practices are for people who don't know what they're doing. That doesn't mean that people are not smart. That just means this is chaos. What do we need to do? I don't know. We Google it. What are best practices? And then you start with that and you modify as you realize, this is best. What could make it better? And then you make it your own and you don't look at best practices anymore. So I Googled it. I've been there 90 days. I Googled it. 4 people. That's so that might change. Might be 5, might be 3.
I've been doing this for 25, 26 years. 4 is about right. For an executive position like a director, maybe a VP that's going to be interacting a lot with clients or interacting with a variety of different groups, like across the entire organization, or dealing with global entities and things like that, or external, internal partners, you might want to add a few more, but really, keep it down to as few as absolutely humanly possible, right?
Because that's a better experience, and you introduce more bias. The more people, the more bias.
Yep.
It's absolutely. Like asking everybody to a potluck and everybody brings a different spice.
And let's say the hiring manager,
not going to be that
they love the candidate, and one person, do they all 4 have equal veto rights? You have to define that ahead of time.
Yes.
I think a
That's the
hiring
hard
manager
part.
really likes the person and she wants to hire them, then they should have the ability to do so.
Yes. And so what happens, especially in HR, like from our people standpoint, we'll have the conversation. We always have to get a representative. We get recruiting team in debriefs as a friendly reminder. The hiring manager gets final decision. If they'd like to ask some additional questions, okay, like if they're not sure and they want to talk to HR or people about that, fine. But ultimately, we don't vote by consensus, right? This is just to get an additional idea about the person that we're potentially bringing on. And it also helps educate people about what types of candidates are available in the whole piece. So we have that experience. Something else that we've been doing for our candidate experiences is partnering with, if we do use outside agencies. So I got my start as an agency recruiter. And I remember early in my career being like, oh, I'm working on a job. And I worked at Robert Half. And my partner would come back and be like, okay, we got this job. Here's the job description. And I would start working on it. Right. I'd be sending all these people and they reject. And not know why. So I started partnering with my agencies as well. I invite them to our open a Slack channel, introduce them to the hiring managers. We have meetings along with them so that they can be actual partners of what's going on and what we're doing. We share that information so that we can have that better part of a candidate experience. The other part that we implemented is a same day decision. We don't need to string it out. Same day decision.
Oh, same day. Yes.
Now we can't always do a debrief on the same day because of scheduling. It might be the next day. But we try to make it a determination as a group within the same day so that we can start preparing the next part of the process.
Done their 4-interview process, let's say the last day they interview, you try and make a final decision.
Yes, like this is still in the running. Sometimes you still have additional candidates that you want to meet with. And it's not a final, but we know that this one's going to be a yes or no. Like this one, we're slanting on yes or no.
Communicate that to the candidate at this point, or
no? But we let them know that they're going to be they're going to know by within, it's within 5 business days. We'll have a decision. One thing that's new that we haven't fully implemented, something that we just have been having conversations around, was about making sure that information comes from the hiring manager. It's like all the things I've taken the past 20 years, all the pet peeves, and just started writing them down and trying to undo them, because those are that used to make me crazy. How many
hiring
times
manager feedback,
you've interviewed, right? You get you talk to a recruiter that says, Henry says he doesn't want to move forward, and you're a candidate going,
what? Why?
Well,
we
get
had
Henry on the phone.
We had
like,
a great interview. We had a great conversation.
I don't know, Jeff. And then you just feel like crud. So it's up to the hiring. We ask the hiring manager, because sometimes there could be some confusion, right? And if you say, well, this is something that the hiring manager mentioned, and then the candidate is like, I would like to clarify. Right. So then you're like, okay, how would you like to clarify? And then the recruiter is going back to the hiring manager, and you're playing this
just
gross
having
game
that
of
whole
pet.
whisper down the chain thing doesn't work, right? That telephone, I mean, anytime you start with a whisper down the lane process and then you end with a whisper down the lane, it's going to cause problems, right?
So we've been doing that
too. A bad taste in the candidate's mouth. The hiring manager looks, and the recruiter winds up getting the brunt of the the negative feedback there. It's just,
yes, it's gross. And the thing is that maybe there was a mistake, and we have to be able to be transparent. But I think it's a better reflection of who we are as an organization.
They confuse candidate backgrounds all the time, right?
Right.
So I remember specifically during my interview process with somebody, even before I started with Monster, the recruiter called me up to reject me and said, we're rejecting you because you didn't have a college degree and you only had 3 years experience in recruiting. I'm like, I think you're calling the wrong candidate, because I've been doing this for 25 years and I do have a bachelor's degree. She's like, no, this is Jeff, right? I'm like, yeah, but that's not relevant feedback. Are you sure you're looking at the right information? I was like, yeah, I don't even want to work at for your
Don't,
company
no,
anyway. So
don't, you don't.
it's not even worth having that conversation, but they definitely made a mistake in my background and experience, right? So
I've heard of
mistakes
people getting
happen.
hired like that. I've heard of
Oh yeah,
people getting jobs
yeah.
and then they show up and they're like, who are you? Like it was
Sometimes it
not the
works,
right
sometimes it doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. So we're just like we were going down all of our goals as an organization, and all of the team members were talking about what they wanted. And then they asked me what my goal was. And I said, my goal is to create such a good candidate experience that people say, I think I'm just going to apply at Textio again because it was just so awesome the last time that I just feel like doing it. Like even for entertainment purposes, so they
Yeah,
can get their
why not?
boost. Well, we all have dreams, but I mean, it doesn't always work.
I'm just curious. You're now VP of Talent Acquisition. Is that your title? All right.
Yes.
So VP of Talent Acquisition, you'd never really been a VP of TA before, right?
No.
So what made you kind of cross over onto that side of the fence there and go
So
on the corporate side?
I'm glad you asked. So I've spent the more recent part of my career coaching VPs of TA and directors of TA on how to find candidates. So as a strategist, I was always like the last bar before giving up, right? Where it's like, we've done all the things and it's not working. And so we would have to go through the same exercise that I have to go through now of what's your process? Because I always look at the 10 steps in TA, look at the 10 steps from job post to hire. And there's like 10 little steps between there. And if you look at all of those, it's because I was more a diversity strategist, like it can fall apart at any one of those stages.
Yeah.
And so that allowed me to be really in tune with some of the great things that have been going on and some things that are just wrong and not working. And so I've kind of built out these processes and talk about it a lot. Like I'd be training people, like this is how you can work with this group, or these are, building the big strategies together and putting them a lot in webinars or keynotes or whatever, and sharing the information that I had. And I was fortunate that our CEO happened to like fall on part of them and was like, you know what, we want that here. And part of it is, I think part of it was also sharing that I felt like diversity and inclusion work needs to be tied directly to talent acquisition instead of separate entities. But it turns out that's not easy for a lot of people. Like they've done recruiting their whole life, they've never done diversity recruiting. Even if you've done diversity recruiting, it's only for a couple of roles in a couple of areas and not understand the full scope of diversity and inclusion. And so those things are very, very closely tied together. And I think that was the big piece of adding that, is my different value add to the organization. And so it's been really great, right?
So,
If I'm doing it the same way as everybody else, probably not.
so
Probably not.
since you brought up the diversity and inclusion stuff here, um, where are companies missing the boat on? I mean, what aren't they doing for diversity and inclusion recruiting strategies?
They don't keep in mind the different experience, like they're doing the same thing they've always done. They bring candidates from a myriad of backgrounds and a lot of diverse backgrounds, but they aren't using the different experiences of this new group of people to their team to better their processes. And so it's like, I always make things really, really basic. It's like you have people that you make coffee, right? And so you bring all these people, and somebody's from Brazil or Colombia, and someone's from New Orleans and Cuba, and you have all these places make different coffee in different ways. I don't know if you're a coffee fan, but I'm a coffee
Yeah.
fan. So they all make coffee in different ways. And so they go to the company, they're like, we want to learn from all these different types of methods of making coffee. And they get to the company and the guy's like, okay, we're just making Folgers. We're just making drip. Now I want to teach all of you how to make drip coffee. And it's like, wait, but I make my coffee different, and I'm from Italy, and my coffee's hotter, and I'm from Cuba, and I like the small cortaditos, and putting all these things together. They're not learning from the experiences, which is frustrating. I don't know what's more frustrating, not being listened to, like in a normal sense, or being hired for my expertise and not being listened to. Right? So it's like, wait a minute. I
Well,
expected
one you're
these
getting
people not
paid
to
and one
listen
you're
to me.
not. So there's a consolation prize at the end of
There
one,
is a
right?
consolation prize, but it's like we there people want a chance to make a difference, and so we have to share that opportunity. Like in order to keep employees happy, and it's like knowing that you're making progress, and part of that progress and why people can get excited is because you're able to offer your expertise to help make that progress. I mean, Jeff, you've got such an extensive background within innovation and talent acquisition, not just having your own agency, but all of those years. Could you imagine if you got hired and they're like, no, we don't care about any of that stuff. Now that you're here, do it this way.
Yeah,
And you can't
happens all the
undo
time.
it.
I have
And
clients
what
that
did
tell
you
me
do?
that too. So yeah,
What do you tell them?
I don't argue. I have a tendency to don't argue with people, right? So
Right.
I don't mind if you want to have a lively debate and say, that's great, but let's test it and see which way works best. I'll be glad to continue doing it your way, but let's do my way also. We'll split
Yep.
test it. We'll send 1,000 candidates to your way, 1,000 candidates to my way, and let the chips fall where they may.
And
I'm
that would be
confident enough,
awesome,
right? And
right?
I'm confident enough in my strategies and tactics that it's usually going to fall my way, and not by 1 or 2 percentage points. It's usually going to fall my way by 20, 30 percentage points. Why? Because I've been doing this a long time
That's right.
and I've got the experience, right? Now, they may have 25 years experience also, but it's not the same experiences that I have, right? We were
That's
doing
right.
high volume, we were doing low volume, we were doing very purple squirrel niche type thing. So I'm very strategic in what kind of strategies I'm applying to the role that is in demand, right? So have I done diversity recruiting? Yeah, I've done tons of it. I built it for some of the largest companies in the United States and abroad. But diversity means a lot of different things. And, you know, just because you're looking for single white females, right, between the ages of 25 and 35, doesn't mean you're not going to also be recruiting, black females or, Asians or whatever. There's
You
lots of
just
different,
like you define their own question. Like
yes.
that's the problem because people are like they have no plan and they're not learning from all of these experiences to create this great thing. And that's what's frustrating. You have to. I will say that's an addition is clearly defining what you're looking for.
Do you think it's okay for companies to pick the kind of diversity they want to hire, though?
At the absence of other types of diversity, I don't think that makes much sense.
Yeah. So I've had many clients come to me and say, Jeff, we need let's say a black engineer, male or female, it doesn't matter, but we need a black engineer. I'm like, why does it need to be a black engineer?
Right. I think people, when you do it for
I
like
understand you want a
just for
diversity
the sake,
candidate.
that's right. Like this is the way I ask the question amongst the different departments. Where do you see an opportunity and what voices are missing from the table that can help the overall product, right? Because I laugh. So I typed in Textio the word fierce, right? And it came up and said, this might be aggressive, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, obviously there's no black women on the in the department because because they wouldn't say this is aggressive. I was like, you just made me feel some kind of way. And it just shows like maybe we need to think more about language, right? Like even one of the best things that's happened at Textio was diversifying between being a distributed team amongst these 9 states because and the big joke was when I came, I was the first hire from Texas and it's my first team meeting with the functional leadership team. And I say, hey, y'all. and, and Kieran, our CEO, said, let me localize that for you. She said, hi, right? Um, but what has happened, especially when we're looking at language, is that you realize like the impact is different. The reason we see these languages are different is that the whole culture in some of these areas are different. And so it allows us to think about what's being said and just sharing information that people may not know about the way things could be culturally. And so I just think that what's great is more than, you can't just say Black person, right? You can't just say I need a Black engineer, because you have to get real specific of what you're trying to do. Like, what is going to be better? Are you doing this for your numbers or for your organization and for the output of whatever you're creating, especially in software engineering?
Yeah, I think too often diversity is a checkbox. We have to do it, right? Or we want to do it. So we're going to push it out to all these, minority and diversity websites and, Black, historical Black colleges and universities, blah, blah, blah. So it winds up being a checkbox. And then they don't really understand why they're doing it, besides that they should, because
That's
there's
right.
some kind of, right? They don't understand the additional benefits of having diversity of voices internally. It definitely adds value to the company from having all those different perspectives. It adds value to the end product that you're delivering to your clients, whether it's a service, a software, or a solution, or a piece of hardware. Having a variety of different voices makes a huge difference in the end product that you deliver. And then you're also doing, but I think too many times the outcome is we have to change the makeup of our organization because we have too many white people at the top.
Probably.
Yeah.
However,
So,
but here's the thing though. Here's the thing that's so important, I think, about is, what are you trying to do? Like you said, it has to align with your business goals. You have to be able to set it up to actually know, or else how do you know you're even have progress, right? Like, what voice are you trying to add? Because at the very beginning, when you started seeing companies with these initiatives, right, you have all white men at the top. And then they started adding white women. And the big joke, and this is when I was much younger, and would look at it and say, you can survey those people anonymously. No company would know which one was the white woman, right? Because it's not really diverse. Because they went to the same colleges, hung out in the same places, parents went, had the same
now we're talking
background.
diversity of thought, as opposed to, our.
That's why you can't just say, this is what I want, and just say I just a
It's
white
not
female.
just about
You're not
race and
adding
gender,
anything.
right? Race and gender
That's
are
right.
the two big ones, right? It's not just
That's
about
right.
race and gender.
Absolutely not.
I think when I think of diversity, right? And I try to explain this to my clients, look, it's not race and gender. It is more about diversity of thought than anything else, right? That's what your main objective should be. And pulling people from the same colleges, the same universities, the same local geographic regions, the same referral channels and things like that. Birds of a feather flock together, right?
That's
so
right.
what happens is everybody starts being very homogenous inside that organization, whether you intend it to be or not. That's just the deal. So you have to start looking in other areas. Now,
Yes.
How you start looking makes a big deal. Just posting it on, diversity job boards and things like that is not going to get you to where you need to be.
Well, this stuff isn't really hard. This is the kicker. I went to Textio after leaving Seek Out, and we still remain friends. There's no animosity from leaving. They understood the value of the opportunity that I was given. But one of the things I learned as a strategist there was that people were looking at the wrong places. So you take the top 10 colleges that have like Black or African American computer science degree recipients. Out of the top 10, only 3 are HBCUs.
Yeah.
Right? You add to the mix, and people are like, oh yeah, well, DC, Chicago. No. You add UCF. How many people are looking at the University of Central Florida for Black software engineers. Not many. North Carolina, you add to that list. But then the other thing was like the number one, people always would say that the number one place for Black software engineers is Georgia. And I'm like, yeah, but what school? And they always go to all of it. And I was like, no, you big dum dum, it's Georgia Tech. Like it's right there in it, like it's in Atlanta. So you have to be more you have to strategize around it. And a lot of people just do what the next person does. And so I had a vendor, person trying to be a vendor, prospective vendor, which I thought was very bold, come to me to talk to me about the problems in my diversity recruiting and present products that I needed. And everybody knows the end of the year, we're very busy. And so the fine young gentleman said to me, here's a list of all the clients that we work with. And I said, which one of those are you most proud of the work that you've done internally? I said, because I'm looking at that list. I was like, can't claim IBM. They invented diversity recruiting. Can't do that company. We know they're not doing well. I wouldn't boast that you helped that company, right? Like that company is in the middle of a lawsuit right now. So we have to change the way we think. It was a pure example of doing the old thing that we've always done and expecting a different result because we slapped diversity on the front end of the software. If your salespeople don't understand the importance of why people are doing this work, then how am I as a purchaser of tools supposed to get this tool to work? And so you have to have a better understanding of your market. And I think that's part of it. Like you can't, it's a difference of, people say diversity of thought, but really it's a diversity of experiences.
That too.
Because you have people that have different things to offer, to bring to these various roles to enhance the organization. And the question is the person going to make us better? And then you have to define what that means.
Yep.
And then say it would be ideal if we had, I do think it's fair to say, ideally we need somebody who's had some of these experiences, or has a great understanding of this, just like you do with any job description, right?
Potentially even depending on the role, are we ready to make the changes this person is going to bring to the table?
That, right? Because that was
the last thing you want to do is, hire this person and then frustrate the heck out of them, knowing that
that's right.
You guys gals got a lot of great ideas, but there's no way we're going to be able to A, afford it, B, be able to implement it. We just don't have the team. It is light years ahead of where we currently are, and we're just not willing to, do those, quantum leaps. We have to take baby steps.
You have to. And this is really one of the things that someone brought to my attention when starting in my new role was that they expected me to try to tackle like diversity and inclusion first. And I first made changes in the hiring process and said, that was a dramatic change in diversity and inclusion. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, when you make it an easier process, that helps everyone, right? We're trying to look at inclusion. We're including more people. The less voices to create biased decisions helps everyone, right? And you can't forget that inclusion is everyone and belonging is everyone. And it also means aligning with your mission. And I think a lot of organizations have to look at their employer brand, their value prop of what they're adding to the table, of what the employee can get. And so they leave it to the candidate who reads one article in Forbes and says, this is the place for me because diversity is really important here, only to find out it's not what they thought. And I think that goes kind of going all the way around the barn, because I'm from Texas. That gets us all the way back to what people are doing as they're moving forward and looking for jobs. It's doing more research to figure out, are all of these things aligned? And a really good way to do that and make sure that the candidate has all of the access to that. So by letting them know, not just what you do, but where to go to find out additional information, and also own the experiences that aren't necessarily favorable that people might say about your organization.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions like, hey, Jeff, should I be posting on, the HBCUs? I was like, Should you post your jobs on there? Probably, right? But most of the HBCUs have less than 5,000 current people enrolled, right?
That's why I'm like the highest enrollees.
Yes.
And that's why people
So,
say, where do I look for a job? LinkedIn and Indeed, like everybody else.
right.
Like,
So, I mean, why are you trying to go to such a small microcosm of, the candidate pool with only 5,000 people in it? And let's say that, you're looking for computer science people that are, recent grads or new grads. How many of those 5,000 actually go to that college are in the computer science that are going to
well,
graduate this year? Maybe 300 max.
but you know what's so awesome? Why this is why everybody. So my kids go to Houston Tillotson, HBCU in Austin,
Mhm.
which is across the street from UT, which is down the road from St. Edwards. And so they all do all of these things together,
Yeah.
which is great. If you have those opportunities where you can bring all of these pieces together and they have this inner networking of bringing everybody together, it's great. But it makes it still, if you look for, like, to your point, I have my oldest is a math major, signed on for their full-time career as a systems architect. Um, Going through that, yeah, do it, but not expecting that to get you everybody. You have to post it all the places. That's where people don't understand. And then it gives people the excuse, oh, we can't find enough Black candidates. Well, if the whole industry is competing for 300 people, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Well, yeah,
And
absolutely. So it's a
so I
problem for
think
the
we're on the
company,
same page,
right?
but
So, yeah.
it's not that it, but if you can change internally, it's a lot of times people will find you. If you have to do more searching than people are searching for you, that might say a lot about the company culture and explain as to why your environment isn't diverse organically.
Right. And understand that a lot of companies need to transition to that, right? So they may not
Yes.
have it currently. And it goes both ways, right? You go into a company down in Silicon Valley and you won't see too many, white guys at the head, a lot of Asians, a lot of, whatever. So,
Yeah.
Indians, etc. And, they've got the opposite problem. They've got to bring in other, different problems than other else. You have to define what your diversity issue
That's
is
right.
that you're trying to solve.
And that's
So,
why I like to say, what voices are missing from the table?
yep.
I found a lot of the times, recently where people have made this push, we're missing male voices from the table. We're missing Asian voices from the table. We're missing these other groups and not being thoughtful of just saying women and people of color. If that is where you're stopping, or if that's what your definition is, you're really missing the point. You're missing the point.
So I always try and ask, okay, look, I put it this perspective, say, look, are you trying to meet a demographic that matches where your company is, or are you trying to meet a specific demographic, X number of males, X number of or Y number of females? Maybe it should be the other way around based on forget my genetics, but are you trying to meet a certain number of Black people, a certain number of white people, a certain number of Asian, certain number of Indian, etc.? Are you trying to meet those things? What are you trying to benchmark against? The industry,
Right.
the local community, globally as a whole? What are you trying to benchmark against? And then you can actually start developing your diversity inclusion strategy,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
I mean, and in the meantime, do people even take new hires and what we're doing moving forward, out of it? But do you have a culture of inclusion anyway? Right? Like, are the people at your company listening to people at your company anyway? Like, you should probably do a little bit of an audit to see if this is a place that people can have original thought, or is your company, if your company is already burdened by groupthink mentality, it's not going to get any better when you add diverse voices. We're just adding more people to be quiet. So people have to feel safe, and that's everyone. So I think it's very important that you implement that psychological safety and make sure that's core of your culture before you start doing anything dramatic. Because this is, like I said, an exercise in change management. And that's just a good thing to do as an organization, to make sure that people are used to listening to new ideas and considering those. So
Yeah.
um,
When you live inside of an echo chamber, it's just a cacophony of noise.
that's right. That's
So
right.
you have to be
Yeah.
able to pick it out. All right. So where can people find you?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I literally, so my favorite, I have a show on Thursday mornings called But First Coffee. That is one of my favorites. It's HR
But
based.
first,
It's
coffee.
me.
You got
That's
to
right.
say it right, right?
Oh,
But first,
sorry.
coffee.
That's right. It's me and John Baldino, and we just are riffing about what's going on in HR between sips of coffee, and then all of a sudden it gets off the rails pretty quick, but we try to bring it back. I have a podcast also called Inclusive AF that I do with Katie Van Horn, where we reach diversity and inclusion topics. But if you really need to talk to me, you could just, send a DM on LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time. I seem to
Awesome.
be.
Any last thoughts?
Yeah, you're doing great things.
Oh, thanks.
I'm really excited for you.
Thanks.
Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. We're trying.
No
We're just creating content. So that's what we're
No, but it's so
focusing on.
helpful. It's so helpful, and thank you for doing that. I feel like right now a big challenge for recruiting is that over the last 10 years, a lot of recruiters, really smart recruiters, learned how to use software, but they don't have the core, recruiting. So to listen to the voices is really helpful to their career.
They know what to do, but not why they're doing it.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Thanks. This is, I don't know, episode 12 or whatever of the 10X Gaming Experience Show. Make it a great one.
All right. Bye-bye.